Welcome to our class. We are recording a live class. We do it every Monday, California time at 11:30 a.m. And it's also available for recording. If one second, I seem to have lost. There we go. Okay, and it's also available as a recording if you want to watch it any other time. So today we're going to be talking about hamstrings and we're going to be talking about the lower back. So this pose is a very accessible pose that we can do Supta Padangusthasana. We really work on the hamstrings, we work on the lower back, but we're going to focus on mechanics here on this 30-minute session. And we're going to work to just take a look on how to work the different parts of the leg so that we can get into the pose with ease. If you haven't watched the previous class, last Monday's class, I've linked it on the description below. I really recommend you taking a look at that to see how the lower back works with the pelvis and tucking and untucking and what that all means and how to get started understanding that. So it's not necessary for this class, but it would be very good to have that as a foundation. If you have seen it, give it a like, help me spread the word on these videos. That would really help me out. So without much more introduction, let's get started into today's topic and looking at how to work the hamstrings and how that works together with the lower back in these laying down twists that we're going to do that are super, super helpful, simple, something that you can do every day and really change the fate of your hamstrings and really the health of your legs and body. So it's also, once you start understanding this pose and doing it without too much resistance, it's one of the best poses that you can do to help with lower back pain. So here we go. Let's get started. And as always, we get started with a few breaths. So sit in a comfortable position. If you want to sit in a chair, that's great. If not, go ahead and sit on the floor. Lift your chest. Take a moment to feel your sit bones grounding on the surface that you're sitting in. And then as you lift your chest, soften the eyes, the ears, the throat. Breathing through the nose, soften the belly, the grip in the belly, the grip in the groins. And just notice as you start breathing, where is it that your breath is trapped? Or where are the holding patterns that you have when you're sitting down, when you're experiencing tightness? Do you have a holding pattern on your, on the top of your legs? Is it on your belly, your throat, your eyes, ears, and throat? So we'll take one more breath where we soften the eyes. We soften the inner ears. And we soften the throat. If there's any tension that starts building up right at the base of the head, at the very top of the neck, the top of the spine here, this area, go ahead and release any tension here by softening the eyes, the ears, and the throat. And then releasing tension stored in the back of the head. Okay. I hope that was helpful. We're going to start this practice by grabbing a mat or sitting in a nice space. And ideally, if you have two walls, that would be great. Not necessary. Even if you have one wall, it's fine. So we'll get started. So I want to get started by laying down onto the floor here. And if you have any feedback on what kind of close-ups you would like to see, let me know. It really helps me to know, okay, this was helpful to see this closer, that kind of thing. Feel free to leave that on the comments. But we're going to come over here and lay down with our feet against the wall if you have a wall available. And we're just going to do this pose first, and then we're going to look at it step by step. So come to the wall. bring the right leg, keep the right leg firmly against the wall, making this right leg very firm. And when I say firm, I mean you're going to imagine that the muscles of the legs are hugging the bones. And you're going to spread the toes against the wall. So I'll show you what that looks like. Okay. So if I have my feet against the wall here, really spread the toes, right? Versus like this, spread the toes against the wall. Keep this leg very grounded. All right, go. Okay, and then bring, so keeping the brain of the pose, let's just say, is this leg. So we don't forget about this leg as we start moving the foot. So the stationary part of the pose is where you keep your attention. And the part that we move it as we breathe. So inhale, as you exhale, bring the right leg to your chest, keeping your attention on the left leg that's straight in the floor, keeping that leg very active. So as you start taking a few breaths here, just notice where you start gathering tension, how your breath begins to start maybe being blocked in certain areas of the body. That, you know, the breath goes in the lung, but the energy is permeating your body as you breathe. So where is it that you feel a gripping? So here, spend 2 breaths where you soften the eyes, the ears, and the throat, just like we did in the beginning. And then when you're finished with that, you're going to, if you need one, go ahead and grab a belt or a strap or a towel and put it around your foot. And you're going to bring the leg up to Supta Pada Mushtasana. If you're here, this is just fine. Okay, so wherever you are in this journey, I have excellent videos showing you how to get safely into a place where you can really straighten the leg and how to do this pose correctly. So I linked those videos in the description below. Check them out. We're not going to be focusing so much on developing that hamstring strength here, but more on the mechanics of the pose and little things that you can do to improve this and to do it in a way that's more intelligent for your body. So I'm going to move my camera as you hold your pose. So come into that pose. So feet against the wall here. And come into the pose. So now that you've been here for a few breaths, I'm going to talk about a couple things that may start happening that you may notice. Okay, I'm going to use my left leg so that you can see this. So here I am in this Supta Pada Mushtasana pose, and there may be some tightness in the hamstring here, but let's just say wherever you find your angle of your leg, start noticing what happens to your hip here. Okay, so take a few breaths and notice, where is the hip? Is it squared to the wall? Or because of tightness, am I bringing the same hip of the leg that's up? Am I bringing that hip up? Okay, so this is the first thing that we watch out for. Is this hip coming up to make up for the tightness in the leg? So let's see what that looks like. Okay. Okay, so here we go. So we have our leg up, right? We take a few breaths with knees to chest. We make we spread the toes of the right leg, right? Make that leg very active. Make this knee very, very straight. And then we see that here, this happens. When this happens, I'm shortening this distance. So I want to make sure that I come over here and I bring my hip back down. Okay. So that I am not compensating for tightness by bringing that hip up. So come here and with your hand, bring that hip down and then work here. You'll feel a lot more, stretch on the leg or bring that hip down. So this is number 1. So we're going to look out for that. So take a few minutes and do it on both sides, and notice if you are shortening this distance in that pose, making sure that we keep this split space open, bringing that hip down so that it's squared with the wall. Okay, so that was step one. Okay, so if you have watched the video before this, you'll see we talk a lot about tucking and untucking and the lumbar curve. So here is your pelvis, right? You have the pelvic bone here, you have the pubic symphysis up here, and it allows you to tuck. Okay, tuck the pelvis, untuck. So it's a rotation of this pelvis around the head of the femur. So here you're untucking, here you are tucking. Okay, so I hope we can see that. Okay, so this tucking and untucking, there's a certain independence from arching your lower back, flattening your lower back. When you tuck, when this action happens, usually the lower back flattens. Okay, this is a very gross movement, meaning it's very, almost automatic without putting any kind of awareness into it. When you untuck, it usually causes this arching of the lower back. However, you can tuck the pelvis and and maintain the normal curve of your lumbar spine. So the tucking can happen. The subtle tucking, the energetic tucking can happen without having to arch or flatten the lower back. Okay, so without worrying too much about this, just knowing the basics, tucking and untucking, we're going to bring our leg back up. And what we're going to notice is that when I bring the leg back up, then I adjust, I'm making sure that I'm not completely shortening the space. I bring that space back here. And I'm working here outwardly on my muscle length and all of that. So now I start to refine a little bit more. Am I flattening the lower back here on this side of the lifted leg? Am I flattening the lower back here because of also trying to compensate for a little tightness? So what I do is I recreate the arch on my lower back here. So recreate that arch. And then you'll find that you get even more stretch on the leg. So what I want to do is first make sure that I'm not closing the space in my waist here. So open up, square these hips to the wall. Take a few breaths here and then recreate the arch on the side of the lifted leg because that side tends to flatten. So create that arch here. And it's very subtle. And at first it's very hard to recreate that arch. So we say, no, I am arching. But actually, eventually when it becomes just an energetic arch here, we all lose it. So create that arch. All right. So practice this for a few breaths. That in itself, it's a really great leg practice to do that, to start understanding the relationship between the lower back with everything that you do. So if you suffer from pain there, it's a really great place to start getting to know your lower back. At first, very muscular, very gross movements, and slowly more refined, very subtle little movements that you do while not holding your breath, while breathing and seeing how the movement of the lower back is going to work with your breath, which what you want is to make it more free versus any tightness or holding any more tension. So we're going to do it one more time here. Make sure that you're not closing the space here in the waist. Bring the leg up. If your hamstrings are very tight, it's definitely okay to support your leg on the chair and do this very subtly with your leg on the chair, okay? Until that you can bring the leg up. So here, lift the chest. Make sure that you're not decreasing the space here. Leg here is turning in. You can actually turn the leg out. So the way it would work is here, the final pose, you have this leg turned in. But if you are having a situation where you're shortening the waist here, you can turn the leg out to bring this hip down, maintaining the hip where it is, right? Without bringing this hip bone up. Go ahead and rotate the leg back in. So if the leg is turned in because this is happening, turn the leg out, lower that hip, and then turn the leg back in. Okay, recreate that lumbar curve here. And then breathe. Breathe, remove any tension from the sacrum, any tension from the groin. Breathe, recreate that lumbar curve. So creating strength in the lumbar, creating awareness in the lumbar. Really, really great place to work. If you're creating any pain or if there's narrowing in your lumbar here and you're having pain, stop, put the legs down, take a few breaths, and you could try it again tomorrow. So that shouldn't create any compression in the lower back. Instead, we should create space and the ability to make sure that one side of your back is not flattening. Okay, so that is concept number one. Okay, so for the second part of this class, what we'll look at is grounding the femurs in this pose. So we really want to make sure that even we can think of the middle of the thigh here going to the floor, which really we're grounding the head of the femur. So let's look at how to do that. So first I'm going to do it without weights. And then I'll put a weight there so you can see where I'm trying to focus on here. So if I bring the leg up, I put my hand here on my thigh. And this is also a nice exercise. So soften the eyes, the ears, and the throat. And instead of just bringing the head up, I want to bring my whole body up. And I do that by placing weight on the leg so that it can make it easier for me to bring the whole body up. So if I have a friend here that wants to place weight with their foot or something on my thigh without hurting, if you have a person who knows how to do this, you can go ahead and use that. Otherwise, you're coming up by placing that weight here on the bottom of the thigh. So sometimes when we do this pose, we do it like this. You know, sometimes there's a really big gap between your thigh and the floor. And so you place the support here underneath the leg to remind you to ground that leg, to really press the leg onto the block. And hands on the thigh. And then bring the leg up, or you can use your belt. And pressing the thigh on this block as much as you can, bring the whole body up. And it's nice to have your foot on the wall, really does help. All right, so come back down. All right, so do that on both legs. Try to breathe as you do it, exhale as you come out. And don't tighten the eyes, the ears, and the throat, you know, as best you can. So try that in both legs. And I will show you what it looks like with the weight also. Okay, so here we have a nice little sandbag. So I'm going to put my leg back on you can leave the block there, especially if there's a gap between the bottom of your hamstring and the floor. Place your foot against the wall. Now I have a little weight here in the middle of my thigh, so it gives me a little bit more support. Ground or bring that thigh down onto the block. Make sure the block isn't behind your knee, but in the middle of the thigh. And then I'm going to think of coming up by using this as, you know, my support to come up from. So bring the whole body up, not just the head. Okay. So learning how to really weigh the thigh down. Okay. So the pose is a lot of the twists. You're going to even do konasana when you're doing it, you're grounding that femur of the back leg, and you're doing this action. You're grounding that femur from the middle of the thigh to be able to then twist. And then watching the action of the lower back, and this is really the concept of the video before this, but just like we did, we tend to have to arch a little bit more or flatten the side that we're twisting. So let's look at that on this pose. Okay, so we come down here to the wall, and we're going to do the steps that we've seen so far. So I'm going to work with my left leg first here so that you can see. And if you have a wall to your to your room that you're practicing in, you can use the wall as a support if your leg doesn't go all the way down. So if you're working on this pose, it's totally fine to use a wall and work here to get started. And so you can do the motions, you can, increase the arch of the back, make sure that this hip isn't coming up, and you can do that with the leg on the wall, and eventually, the leg comes down and you can do it a little bit further down. So this is, if you need support, use your wall. All right. So this is not so much about bringing the leg all the way down. So we're not working on this video in the length of the hamstring so much, but we're trying to understand what happens in the leg. Where do you start training this leg to go down? How you work with the lower back and what happens in the lower back as it flattens. And so you have to recreate that arch so that you're not twisting with that flatness here. And so it's not about tucking and untucking. It's really just about the lumbar area. Okay. So although, we may tuck a little bit, we're also not flattening the arch of the lower back. Okay. So bring the leg up. Make the leg that's straight, make it very firm. So hug the muscle to the bone. Then if you need to keep that block underneath your thigh, round the middle of the thigh into the floor and keep your attention there. So don't just make that leg, relax. Keep that leg active without hardening eyes, ears, and throat. All right. Then bring this left leg up and then fix, as best as the body will allow you. Make sure that you're not lifting and turning the leg in by shortening the space in the waist. So give that space back. Turn the leg in and then recreate the arch here behind the, in this case, the left lumbar. So recreate the arch. And just be careful because you're going to find yourself your mind telling you, no, I have an arch there. But you can always recreate the arch a little bit more. From the very bottom part of the lumbar, recreate that arch versus doing it on the top of the lumbar. Recreate the arch from the bottom. And then as you come up, so there's videos where I explain, as you come up, instead of yanking the leg down, release the opposite groin. So with my right leg active here, I start releasing the opposite groin and giving my leg permission to come down by releasing here versus creating tension. So as I'm bringing the leg down, I can bring it down a lot and I can bring this leg up, right? So that doesn't do much. So it's much better to not come all the way down, but keep grounding this middle part of the thigh here. Practice this first. So keep the energy here, making sure that I'm maintaining this curve, right? A little bit. And then release any tension here in the groin. And so the opposite groin, if I tighten the opposite groin, I have to yank this. If I release the groin here, I start being able to allow my leg to just descend. Okay, so recreate the arch, ground this leg, and then, like we saw in the twisting video, I'm going to turn my head to my right, the opposite side of my leg. So what I can do is I can tilt my head to the left and turn it to the right, and then really ground that leg down, my right leg down, and recreate the arch in the lower back. Okay, and then we work like that without accumulating any tension in the eyes, the ears, or the throat. And as you twist the head, see if you find the connection from the ear to the extended right arm. All right, and so do that on both sides, maintaining 3 things that we'll focus on here. Creating that grounding of the lower leg onto the ground, so the leg that's extended laying down on the floor. Then taking a look at the hips, making sure they're squared with the wall, keeping that space in the waist, and recreating that arch in the lower back. All right. If you have any questions about that, send me a comment. I'll answer them as I can. And now we're going to do the full twisted version. And this is the pose that will really help with lower back pain. So all of the variations of this, especially working on your hamstring, is really going to help your lower back. So I recommend doing this pose for a few months, really getting familiar with the pose. It's actually great for digestion. It energizes your legs. Really, when you finish up practice on both sides of the Supta Bandha Uttanasana, it is energizing and wonderful. So I hope you practice it. But also it will strengthen, your back and it's wonderful. So let's do the full twisted version of this. So I'll come a little bit further away from the wall here. Okay, and so here I'm really going to be watching for maintaining that curve on the lower back. So that's going to be a huge place. So develop that awareness through the other poses first, and then come and try to see what you can feel here. Okay, so the positioning of my feet is going to be very important. If I want to feel the twist further up my body, so if I really want to twist more, feel the twist on the upper body, I'm going to keep my foot like this, toes pointing up to the ceiling. If I allow my foot to turn here, I'm going to feel the twist lower down on my body. Okay, so if I keep my feet up, I will feel it higher up. If I allow the foot to twist, I'll feel the twist lower down in the body. Okay, so same steps. Firm, put my foot firmly against the wall here, spread the toes, make the leg very active, and start grounding the leg in the middle of the thigh here. So really ground the bottom leg. Okay, take a deep breath, inhale, exhale, bring the leg up, make sure that you're not shortening the space here in between the waist. Square those hips with the wall. Recreate the arch on the lower back. So recreate that arch. And this is not too much about tucking and untucking, but more about just softening the belly and recreating that arch. Inhale, exhale, bring the leg back to the side. And see, if I keep my foot pointing up, the twist will come up. If I allow that foot to roll over to the side, it would make it down. Bring the twist down. Both are great. So here, when I'm twisting here, this is where I lose the arch of the lower back here. And so you can hit yourself right there as a caring and gentle reminder to really arch. Bring that, recreate the arch of your lumbar. So recreate that lumbar arch. Not very easy to do. So if it's completely impossible, then bring the legs up either by having the legs be on the wall here or on a block. Okay, so bring the legs here and then recreate. And then I'm just going to turn my foot, which is fine here in the back, and I'm going to recreate this arch. So first, don't allow this to happen, right? So pretend this sit bone is going towards the wall, towards the middle of the thigh here, right? So here is my hip coming up. Bring the hip down, bring the sit bone to the middle of your thigh. So create that space here, and then recreate this arch. So recreate the arch in the lower back and keep doing it, and you really feel the leg come alive. All right. Not easy to do, easy to just assume that, okay, I've done it. We keep going and going. So with every breath, bring this sit bone back down. Pretend this sit bone is going into this thigh. Okay. Then, so you give yourself this space back. Then recreate the arch of the back here. And then go on doing that over and over and over and over again. Create the arch without hurting yourself, okay? Okay, and then since the legs are turned towards the wall, when I finally settle into the pose, I start breathing normally without holding my breath. I'm going to turn my head over to the side. So I can either choose to just turn the head. Energetically, that's not going to feel very good. I might kind of jam some energy, some breath, some vital force around my neck. So what I want to do is I want to tilt my head to the right and then turn to the left. Okay, making sure this isn't happening. So bringing that sit bone down, recreating the curve. After that's done, I go ahead and I can turn my head and then establish that connection between the right ear and the left elbow. Lift the chest, breathe, straighten the bottom leg. And you can work here for, minutes and minutes and minutes, maybe hours. And then align. Find that alignment meaning find a place where you can do this effortlessly after a lot of practice, and you can feel the ease through which you can breathe in this pose without having the breath be caught anywhere in your body, just allowing yourself to twist. As you inhale, you lift, exhale, you twist in this pose, and then start understanding where that twist is going in your back and how it's helping you either heal from pain, create health in the body, move the energy in a good way, just energize and bring health to your body, bring a lot of clarity to your mind, and just become one of those wonderful poses that are super beneficial for you. All right, so to come out of the pose, sometimes it's nice to bring both legs to the right side and go ahead and come up. Okay. And this is our 30-minute session. I hope that this was a good review from last time, but in a different pose, so that you can really start to understand these connections. And really intellectually, I think it's it's good to know that first and to have the steps to repeat in your mind what the steps are so that you don't forget. So initially you need that. Okay, so I'm going to ground the leg, then I'm going to square the hips, and I'm going to arch, my lumbar, and then, you can turn the head. All the while you are breathing freely, you're not harboring any tension in the eyes, ears, and throat. So start with that. Once that's understood and you see the concept, then you really start your practice, and that's what's going to give you that insight and that ability to do it in a way that's so joyful and effortless. So I hope that you are gifted with the time to practice this, even if it's 10 minutes a day, if you want to go deeper into your twists and truly understand how it benefits your body and how you start feeling better, and then receiving some clarity. And maybe that's what the detoxification is with twists. They're challenging, but they are wonderful. So I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, let me know, and I will see you next week. Thank you.